The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. As Clara trudged home from another long, exhausting day at work. Her feet ached, her stomach growled, and her heart felt heavy under the weight of endless bills and responsibilities. At only 23 years old, life had been unkind to her. Since her parents' untimely death, she had been juggling multiple jobs to make ends meet, all while dreaming of a brighter future that seemed perpetually out of reach. Clara stopped by a small bakery on the corner of her street, tempted by the sweet aroma wafting through the air. She hesitated, counting the last few crumpled bills in her worn-out wallet. It was barely enough for a loaf of bread, but she was starving. Just as she stepped inside, she noticed an elderly man sitting on the curb outside. His frail frame was wrapped in tattered clothes, and his hands trembled as he held a small, weathered sign. "Hungry. Anything helps." Clara paused, her heart sinking. The man's eyes were filled with a quiet despair, but there was a glimmer of dignity in the way he avoided making direct eye contact, as though asking for help was a shame he couldn't bear. She felt a pang of guilt. She could barely afford to feed herself, but she couldn't ignore him. "Wait here," she said softly, stepping into the bakery. With her limited funds, she bought a warm loaf of bread, a small cup of soup, and a bottle of water. It left her with nothing but a few coins, but the thought of walking away without helping him felt worse than an empty wallet. Returning to the man, she knelt beside him and offered the food. "Here," she said with a gentle smile. "It's not much, but it's warm." The man looked at her, his eyes brimming with gratitude. "Thank you, dear," he said, his voice hoarse. "You didn't have to do this." "I couldn't just walk away," Clara replied. "Everyone deserves kindness, especially on hard days." They sat in silence for a moment as he ate, the bustling city fading into the background. Finally, he looked at her and asked, "What's your name, child?" "Clara," she said simply. "You've got a good heart, Clara," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Never lose that." Clara smiled, though her own hardships felt insurmountable. As she walked away, she didn't see the glimmer of recognition in the old man's eyes, or the way he watched her with a knowing expression. The next morning, Clara was back at her job at the local diner, her worn apron tied tightly around her waist. The bustling clatter of plates and chatter of customers filled the small space, but her mind wandered to the elderly man from the night before. She hoped he had found some shelter or more food. She wished she could have done more, but her own life was a constant balancing act, teetering between survival and despair. Clara didn't notice that someone had been watching her closely all morning. A man in a sharp gray suit sat in a corner booth, sipping coffee and flipping through his phone. His eyes would occasionally lift to observe Clara as she moved through the crowded diner. Her energy low, but her demeanor kind. She greeted every customer with a polite smile, even when the rudeness of some grated against her patience. What Clara didn't know was that this man, Mr. James Carter, wasn't just another customer. He was the CEO of Carter Enterprises, a multi-million-dollar corporation headquartered just blocks away. And he had a reason for being there. Earlier that morning, James had received a surprising call from his father, George Carter, the very same elderly man Clara had helped the night before. George had been disguising himself as a homeless man to observe the city's people, believing it gave him perspective on the struggles of ordinary citizens. While most passed him by with indifferent glances, Clara had stopped, offering him warmth and dignity when she herself had so little to give. "She didn't even think twice, James," George had said over the phone. "She spent her last bit of money on a stranger. People like her are rare in this world. I want you to find her." James hadn't questioned his father's request. He respected George's unorthodox ways and had seen how these encounters often led to valuable lessons. But as James observed Clara, he found himself intrigued. She wasn't just kind. There was a quiet resilience about her, a determination in the way she carried herself despite the weariness etched on her face. "Clara!" a sharp voice called out, snapping her back to the present. It was her manager, Mr. Grayson, a perpetually irritable man with little patience. "Table 4's waiting. Move faster, would you?" "Sorry," Clara said, hurrying to deliver the order. She didn't mind hard work, but her manager's constant belittling wore on her. As she placed the plates on table 4, her hands trembling slightly from fatigue, one of the customers frowned. "This isn't what I ordered," the woman snapped. Clara froze. "I'm so sorry. Let me fix that for you right away." "Hurry up next time. We've been waiting forever," the woman added, her tone icy. Clara bit her lip and nodded, retreating to the kitchen. She didn't see James watching the entire interaction, his brow furrowing. He made a note to speak to her before leaving the diner. By the time James finished his meal, the lunch rush was beginning to slow. He approached the counter where Clara was busy refilling the coffee machine. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but commanding. Clara turned, surprised by his presence. "Oh, hi. How can I help you?" James hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I just wanted to say, I admire how hard you work. It can't be easy dealing with people like the one at table 4. Clara blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, thank you. It's just part of the job," she replied, trying to dismiss the compliment. "No," James said firmly. "It's not just part of the job. It's clear you're the kind of person who goes above and beyond, even when it's not appreciated." Clara felt her cheeks flush. "That's kind of you to say, but I'm just doing my best." James smiled. Sometimes, doing your best makes all the difference. Before she could respond, he slipped a crisp business card onto the counter. "If you ever want to talk about other opportunities, give me a call." Clara stared at the card, her heart pounding. "Thank you, but why?" "Let's just say someone told me about what you did last night," he said cryptically. With that, James tipped his head and walked out, leaving Clara standing there in stunned silence. Hours later, as Clara walked home, she replayed the encounter in her mind. She didn't know who James Carter was or how he knew about the elderly man, but his words lingered. For the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope, a tiny ember that whispered, maybe things can change. Little did Clara know, her life was already in the process of transforming. 2 days passed, and Clara couldn't stop thinking about the encounter at the diner. The business card James had left sat on her small bedside table, its pristine surface out of place in her otherwise modest apartment. Every time she glanced at it, doubt gnawed at her. Why would someone like him, a man who clearly didn't belong in her struggling world, offer her an opportunity? She had no experience, no qualifications beyond her ability to work hard. By the 3rd day, curiosity got the better of her. With trembling hands, Clara picked up her phone and dialed the number on the card. The line rang twice before a calm, professional voice answered. "James Carter speaking." Clara's heart raced. Hi, this is Clara from the diner. You, left me your card. Clara, James said warmly, as though he had been expecting her call. I'm glad you reached out. I was hoping you would. Are you free to meet today? Meet? Clara echoed, surprised. What for? To discuss an opportunity, James replied simply. Don't worry, it's nothing formal. Just a conversation. How about coffee at the Bluebird Cafe at 2 p.m.? Clara hesitated, the weight of her insecurities threatening to hold her back. But something in his tone reassured her. Okay, she said finally. By 1:50 p.m., Clara was already at the cafe, nervously fiddling with the hem of her coat. She had dressed as neatly as she could, though her worn-out shoes and thrifted outfit couldn't compare to the polished patrons around her. James arrived promptly at 2, exuding an air of confidence that made Clara feel even more out of place. He greeted her with a warm smile and gestured for her to sit. Thank you for coming, he said as they settled into their seats. I still don't understand why I'm here, Clara admitted, her voice tinged with nervousness. James leaned forward, his gaze steady. Let me explain. The elderly man you helped the other night, George Carter, is my father. Clara's eyes widened. Your father? Yes, he spends time observing people, trying to understand the world from a different perspective, James explained. When he told me about you, about how you helped him, even though you clearly didn't have much to spare, I knew I had to meet you. Clara was stunned. I didn't do it for recognition or anything. I just couldn't leave him hungry. That's exactly why it matters, James said. It's rare to find someone who acts selflessly, especially when they're struggling themselves. My father was deeply moved by your kindness, and frankly, so was I. Clara shifted uncomfortably. But I'm just a waitress. I don't see how that makes me special. James smiled. You're more than that. You have integrity and compassion, qualities that can't be taught. I want to offer you a chance to work at Carter Enterprises. Clara blinked, convinced she had misheard. Wait, what? Me? Why? Because people like you deserve a chance, James said simply. You'll start in an entry-level position, basic admin work. No strings attached. It's a step up from where you are now, and if you're willing to learn, I think you can go far. Clara's mind raced. The offer seemed too good to be true, and yet James's sincerity was unmistakable. I don't have the experience, she said hesitantly. You'll learn, James replied confidently, and we'll help you. All I ask is that you keep being the person you were that night, the person who saw someone in need and acted without expecting anything in return. Tears welled in Clara's eyes. For so long she had felt invisible, stuck in a cycle of hardship that seemed unbreakable. This felt like a lifeline, an opportunity not just for a better job, but for a better life. Okay, she said finally, her voice trembling with emotion. I'll do it. James extended his hand, and Clara shook it, feeling the weight of her decision sink in. For the first time in years, hope felt like more than a fleeting dream. As Clara left the cafe, clutching the folder James had given her with details about her new position, she felt a surge of determination. This was her chance to prove that her kindness, her perseverance, and her belief in doing the right thing could lead to something extraordinary. But what she didn't yet realize was that this was only the beginning. Weeks turned into months, and Clara's life transformed in ways she never thought possible. Working at Carter Enterprises wasn't easy. She had to learn fast and adapt to a corporate world that felt miles away from the diner she once called her workplace. But Clara was determined. She stayed late to master spreadsheets, studied during her lunch breaks, and asked questions whenever she was unsure. James had kept his word, providing her with mentorship and opportunities to grow. But Clara knew this was no charity case. She earned every step forward through her dedication and grit. Slowly, she began to gain confidence. For the first time in her life, Clara felt not just seen, but valued. One afternoon, nearly a year after she started, Clara was called into James's office. The walls of his corner office were lined with glass, offering a breathtaking view of the city she had once struggled to navigate. "You wanted to see me?" Clara asked, her voice steady but curious. James smiled as he gestured for her to sit. "Clara, you've been doing exceptional work. Everyone's noticed, not just your skills, but your attitude. You've become an integral part of the team." "Thank you," Clara said, warmth spreading through her chest. "I've got good news," James continued. "We're promoting you to team lead. You'll oversee a small group and help manage one of our new projects." Clara's jaw dropped. "Me? Are you serious?" "Absolutely," James said. "You've earned this, and I know you'll excel." Tears pricked her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "Thank you, James. I won't let you down." James leaned back in his chair, studying her with a thoughtful expression. "I'd like to share something else with you," he said. "My father, you remember George? He's been keeping an eye on you as well. He's been investing in people who've shown extraordinary character, and he wants to help you achieve more than just a promotion." Clara frowned in confusion. "What do you mean?" James pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Inside was a scholarship fund in her name, enough to cover her college tuition and living expenses. Clara gasped, her hands trembling as she stared at the papers. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," James said simply. "My father believes, and I agree, that you have the potential to do great things. This is just another step forward." Months later, Clara began her college classes, balancing her coursework with her role at Carter Enterprises. She poured herself into her studies, determined to seize every opportunity. Her life was a whirlwind of challenges and growth, but she faced each day with the same kindness and resilience that had brought her this far. One evening, Clara found herself walking down the same street where she had first met George. The memory of that night came rushing back, the cold air, the warmth of the bread she had shared, the quiet gratitude in George's eyes. As she approached the corner, she saw a young boy sitting on the curb, clutching a torn backpack and looking lost. Clara's heart tightened. She knelt beside him and offered a warm smile. "Hey there," she said gently. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up, his eyes wide with uncertainty. "I missed my bus," he mumbled. "I don't know how to get home." Clara thought for a moment. "Don't worry, let's figure it out together." She stayed with the boy until they contacted his parents, ensuring he was safe. As she watched him reunite with his relieved mother, Clara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Walking away, she realized something profound. The kindness she had once offered George, without expecting anything in return, had come full circle. Her life had changed because she had chosen to act selflessly, and now she could continue that ripple of kindness for others. Years later, Clara stood in a conference room at Carter Enterprises, now a respected project manager and a mentor to new employees. She often shared her story, not to boast, but to inspire. "Kindness isn't about grand gestures," she would say. It's about the small moments when we choose to see other, even when life makes it hard. Sometimes those moments change everything. And for Clara, they had. At the end, join Stories of Brilliance, where every act of kindness becomes a spark of inspiration. Like, share, and subscribe to keep the light of compassion alive.